This video focuses on the reasons citing is important. It also covers the similarities between the two most common citation styles, APA and MLA. Let's start with understanding what plagiarism is and how to avoid it. Plagiarism is more than just an issue of integrity. According to the Council of Writing Program Administrators, in an instructional setting, plagiarism occurs when a writer deliberately uses someone else's language, ideas, or other original material without acknowledging its source. There is a distinction between plagiarism and the misuse of sources. Plagiarism occurs when a writer submits someone else's words or ideas as his or her own, thus taking credit for someone else's intellectual property. Misuse of sources is incredibly common, and improper citations can unknowingly or unintentionally end up as plagiarism. One common mistake writers make is not understanding when to cite information. A good rule of thumb is to cite anything that is not from your own ideas or isn't common knowledge. Common knowledge can sometimes be difficult to understand. Here are some examples. Common knowledge means the information doesn't belong to anyone, isn't changing, and is information that people know to be true. When in doubt, always cite the information. Here's an example of this using two different passages from an essay. The first passage says students can drop out of high school. This is common knowledge. However, the second passage includes research that Fitch completed in 2007, and it must be attributed to this author. There's no need to cite common knowledge, but whenever using source material, citations are required. In this case, the source material is directly quoted, so quotation marks indicate that not only the information, but these exact words are from the author. Sometimes you'll use an entire sentence as a direct quote, and other times you might only use part of a sentence. Quotation marks indicate any time that you use someone else's words. A good rule of thumb is citing any time you use 3 or more exact words from a source. The best way to include a direct quote in a paper is to set up the quote with an introductory phrase before including the quoted material. Most of the words within a paper will be paraphrased. This is when you take information from a source, but put it into your own words. Paraphrases are not surrounded in quotation marks. Look at the first passage here. This is a direct quote. In the second passage, I summed up the information and put it into my own words. Even though these are my own words, the idea still belongs to the original author, and I still must give credit to the author's ideas by citing in text. All citation styles use in-text citations to indicate where on the bibliography the source can be found. An in-text citation is just a shortened form of the longer citation that can be found in whole on the bibliography. No matter what citation style you are using, you must cite any information that is from another source. The best rule of thumb when writing is to cite as you write. Even if you're unsure of how to cite a source correctly in whichever formatting style you're using, go ahead and write down something beside the information so that you know what source you're using. Then you can bring your paper into the Writing Center and we can help you cite the sources correctly. Both citation styles require your name and class information on the paper. APA requires a title page. For MLA, your name and class information goes directly on the first page. Both citation styles require you to add page numbers as well. Each citation style requires a bibliography page at the end of the paper. Bibliography is just a fancy word meaning a list of sources used within the paper. In APA, the bibliography is called a reference page, and in MLA, it is called a works cited page, but they both begin on a new page following the paper. The correct title is centered at the top of that page. If there is more than one source on the reference or works cited pages, be sure to make the headings plural. Notice how one source appears under reference while two sources appear under works cited. All entries are written using a hanging indent. To create the hanging indent in Microsoft Word, highlight your source or sources and right-click. Select Paragraph. Under Special, select Hanging. This will give you the correct indentation spacing by default. Also double check here that the line spacing is set to double. Once you set the hanging indentation for one source, the other sources should follow suit. Documenting sources is important to not only avoid plagiarism, but to also acknowledge intellectual property, promote the exchange of intellectual property, and to add credibility to your paper by showing that an expert in the field agrees with your opinions. Regardless of where you found the information, you must always document the source of that information. The Writing Center offers handbooks on both APA and MLA citations and is always willing to help with any documentation questions you may have.